I always thought I had it all: great job, beautiful wife, nice house, and a quiet neighborhood. My name's David Miller, and I'm a forensic accountant. That means I spend my days digging through financial records, finding the tiny cracks in people's lives. Funny thing is, I never thought I'd have to use those skills at home. Clara and I had been married for 7 years. She was stunning: long dark hair, sharp green eyes, always dressed like she was about to walk into a boardroom even when she was just going to the grocery store. We met at a corporate mixer, back when I still bothered with those things. She was in marketing, quick with a joke, the kind of woman who could charm a room without even trying. I was the quiet numbers guy, but somehow, she picked me. For years, everything was good. Not perfect, no marriage is, but solid. We had our routines. Sunday morning coffee on the patio, takeout on Fridays, vacations in the summer. I liked predictability. Clara used to say that was my biggest strength and my biggest flaw. Then, little things started slipping. It began with the credit card bill. I always checked it, force of habit. One month, I noticed a charge for a fancy restaurant downtown. $238. I didn't remember going there. When I asked Clara about it, she just shrugged and said, "Oh, that was that client dinner I told you about. The one with the investors." I didn't remember her mentioning it. But hey, maybe I forgot. Then there were the work trips. Clara traveled sometimes for her job, but suddenly, she was gone more often. Short trips, just a night or two. Always last minute. "The agency needs me in Chicago," she'd say, or "there's a conference in Atlanta." I'd nod, help her pack, kiss her goodbye. But one night, I checked the weather for her flight. Clear skies. Then, around midnight, I got a text. Flight delayed. Stuck at the airport. I pulled up the arrivals board. No delays. Her flight had landed on time. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she meant a connecting flight. Maybe the airline system was wrong. But the doubt stuck in my head like a splinter. Then came the phone thing. Clara was never the type to ignore a call. But lately, her phone would go straight to voice time at weird hours. Once, I called her at 8 p.m. just to ask if she wanted me to pick up dinner. No answer. I tried again an hour later, nothing. When she finally walked in at 9:30, she said, "Oh, my battery died." But when she plugged it in, it lit up at 62%. I didn't say anything. Just watched her from the corner of my eye as she scrolled through messages, her thumb moving fast, like she was deleting something. The worst part? She started turning it off at night. Clara used to leave her phone on the nightstand. Same as me. Then, one morning, I grabbed it by mistake when mine was charging. The screen stayed black. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Dead. When she came out of the shower, I held it up. "Your phone's off." She snatched it from me, quick and tense. Yeah, I turned it off. Didn't want work bothering me. Since when? I didn't push. But that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running the numbers in my head like a ledger. The restaurant charge. The trips. The phone. None of it added up. And if there's one thing I know, it's that numbers don't lie. People do. I've spent my career finding patterns in chaos. Give me a stack of financial records, and I'll show you where the money really went. So when my gut told me something was off with Clara, I did what I do best. I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. The way you pull a loose thread without unraveling the whole sweater. First stop, the bank statements. I logged into our joint account late one night after Clara had gone to bed. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the home office. Scrolling through transactions, I highlighted every charge I didn't recognize. That $238 dinner, sure, but now I noticed others. A boutique hotel in the city 2 weeks ago. A florist charge when it wasn't our anniversary. A parking garage receipt from the business district on a day Clara claimed she was working from home. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I pulled up her Google location history next. We shared family maps for safety, something we'd set up years ago when she took that solo trip to Denver. The timeline showed her at the office when she said she was there. But then I noticed gaps. 3 hours missing last Tuesday afternoon. A whole evening wiped clean 2 Fridays back. Like someone had selectively edited her day. I opened a spreadsheet and started logging everything: dates, times, amounts. The accountant in me needed to see it all laid out. The next morning, I watched Clara move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She hummed while making coffee, her phone face down on the counter like always now. "You got plans today?" I asked, casual, pouring myself a cup. Just the usual. Lunch with Sarah, then that 3 p.m. conference call. She didn't look up from slicing a banana. I nodded, sipping my coffee. Sarah had moved to Portland 6 months ago. I started checking her calendar against reality. When her phone buzzed with a reminder for a marketing workshop, I made note of the location. That afternoon, I drove past the conference center, empty parking lot, lights off. At 3:17 p.m., her location pinged at a high-rise apartment building across town. I sat in my car down the block, hands tight on the wheel, watching the entrance through binoculars like some low-rent private eye. At 5:48 p.m., she emerged, fixing her hair. Alone. But she'd told me she was working late. That night, I waited until she was in the shower to check her purse. Receipts told stories. A coffee shop near that apartment building, a pharmacy purchase for mints and gum, a dry cleaner's ticket for a silk blouse I'd never seen her wear. I snapped photos of everything with my phone, my hands steady but my pulse thumping in my ears. The real jackpot came when I checked our cloud storage. Clara had synced her photos automatically to our shared account. Most were harmless, screenshots, memes, pictures of her lunch. But in the recently deleted folder, I found a selfie I'd never seen. She was smiling, hair down, wearing that blouse from the dry cleaner receipt. The timestamp showed last Thursday at 4:22 p.m. during another one of her late meetings. The kicker? The edge of a hotel-style headboard in the background. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I saved it to a hidden folder on my phone, along with everything else. For 2 weeks, I kept building my case. I noted when she started wearing perfume on random weekdays. How she'd started doing that nervous thing with her earring when telling me about her work dinners. The way she'd suddenly remember to take her phone with her every time she left the room. The hardest part was acting normal. Kissing her goodbye in the mornings. Laughing at her jokes over dinner. Lying in bed beside her, wide awake, while she breathed evenly beside me. I thought about confronting her 100 times. But I needed more. I needed proof she couldn't talk her way out of. Because if there's one thing I knew about Clara, it's that she was always the smartest person in the room. And I needed to be smarter. I sat in my home office staring at Clara's fitness tracker sitting in its charging cradle on her nightstand. That little black band with its glowing green lights had suddenly become the most interesting thing in our house. She never took the damn thing off. Not to shower, not to swim, not even to bed. Gotta close my rings, she'd always say with that smile that used to make my chest tighten. Now it just made my stomach turn. It took me 3 nights to crack it. The first night, I tried pairing it to my phone. No dice, password protected. The second night, I watched her enter her passcode when she thought I wasn't looking. For digits, 0923. Our anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. On the third night, when Clara was in the bath with her romantic playlist blasting, another new habit, I grabbed the tracker and synced it to my laptop. The manufacturer's software gave me everything: heart rate, step count, sleep patterns. But what I needed was buried in the advanced settings: full GPS history. The map loaded slowly, painting a dotted line of Clara's life over the past month. There was her commute to the office, her trips to the gym, her weekly Starbucks run. And then there were the anomalies. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, like clockwork, her tracker showed her leaving work at 2:45 p.m. and traveling to the Alexander, one of those high-end apartment buildings downtown where the doormats cost more than my first car. She'd stay for exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes before returning to her office. The precision of it hurt almost as much as the deception. I cross-referenced the dates with our shared calendar. Client meetings, networking events, team brainstorming. All lies. The tracker didn't show who she was meeting in that apartment, but it didn't need to. The pattern was too clear, too consistent to be anything but what I feared. The next day, I played sick to stay home while Clara went to work. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I drove to the Alexander. The building loomed over me. All glass and steel, the kind of place where they charge extra for the view. I parked across the street and watched the entrance like a stalker. At 2:53 p.m., right on schedule, Clara's Lexus pulled into the underground garage. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tight. I waited and waited. At 5:08 p.m., she emerged, adjusting her blouse in that way women do when they're trying to look casual. She checked her phone, smiled at something, then drove off like it was just another Tuesday. I sat there in my car, sweating through my shirt despite the AC blasting. The tracker data had been abstract, dots on a map. Seeing her actually walk into that building made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. That night, while Clara slept, I went through her things methodically. Her planner had coded initials, MA, 3 p.m. on the suspicious dates. Her email showed reservations at restaurants I'd never been to. Her text messages were clean, too clean, like someone who knew how to cover their tracks. But the fitness tracker didn't lie. And neither did the receipt I found crumpled in her gym bag, a $400 charge from some boutique downtown, dated last Thursday. The same day her heart rate spiked to 120 BPM at 3:17 p.m. while she was supposedly in a budget meeting. I saved every shred of evidence to an encrypted drive labeled Tax Documents 2019. The accountant in me appreciated the irony. The husband in me just felt numb. As I lay in bed that night listening to Clara breathe beside me, I realized something terrifying. I was better at catching lies than telling them. And right now, that was the only advantage I had. I ordered the spy camera from one of those electronic sites that doesn't ask questions. Tiny thing, about the size of a quarter, with a magnetic back and enough battery life to record 8 hours straight. It arrived in plain brown packaging that I stashed in my work bag before Clara could see it. Installing it took less than 30 seconds. I waited until Clara was at one of her yoga classes, which, according to the fitness tracker, usually meant 90 minutes at the Alexander. Her Lexus sat alone in our garage, still warm from her drive home earlier. The interior smelled like her vanilla air freshener and that expensive shampoo she liked. I placed the camera up under the dashboard, right where the passenger side footwell met the center console. The angle was perfect. It could see the driver's seat clearly but wasn't visible unless you were looking for it. I tested the feed on my phone. Crystal clear video with decent audio. The things technology can do these days would scare most people. Right then, it just made me sick to my stomach. For 3 days, nothing. Just Clara driving to work, running errands, coming home. I started to think maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe there was some explanation for everything. Maybe. Then on Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the camera. I was in the middle of reconciling a client's books when the notification popped up. My hand shook as I pulled up the live feed. There was Clara, sitting in the driver's seat, but she wasn't driving. The Lexus was parked somewhere shadowy, probably that underground garage at the Alexander again. She had her phone pressed to her ear, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. I know, she was saying, her voice softer than when she talked to me. But you're worth the risk. A pause. Then she laughed, really laughed, the kind that used to make me fall in love with her. No, Mark, listen, of course I miss you too. But we have to be careful. Mark. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been expecting it, but hearing her say it out loud made everything real in a way I wasn't prepared for. The conversation lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes of Clara whispering things to this Mark guy that she hadn't said to me in years. 17 minutes of her biting her lip the way she used to do with me, twirling her hair around her finger, making plans to see him again on Tuesday. Don't worry about David, she said at one point, rolling her eyes like I was some annoying coworker instead of her husband. He's completely clueless. That's when I had to mute the feed because I was afraid I'd throw my phone across the room. I spent that night going through the rest of the footage like a man possessed. There were 3 more calls to Mark over the next 48 hours, each one more damning than the last. Clara talking about how she couldn't wait to see him, making jokes about how boring our life was. At one point, she even complained about my annoying habit of wanting to eat dinner together every night. The worst part? The way her voice changed when she talked to him. Higher, lighter, like she was 20 again. I hadn't heard that version of Clara in years. I thought she'd just grown up. Turns out she'd just grown tired of me. On Saturday morning, while Clara was getting ready for another one of her spa days, I retrieved the camera. The battery was almost dead, but it had done its job. I transferred all the footage to the same encrypted drive where I kept the tracker data and the receipts. I remember staring at that drive for a long time, turning it over in my hands like it might hold some secret I hadn't uncovered yet. It wasn't just the cheating that got me. It was the ease with which she lied. The way she could look me in the eye over breakfast and talk about our weekend plans while secretly counting down the hours until she could see him again. That's when I realized something important. The woman I married didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. And that meant I didn't have to play by the rules either. I gave myself 2 weeks to think. 2 weeks to let the white-hot anger settle into something colder, sharper, something I could actually use. The first thing I did was start separating our finances. Small moves at first, transferring a few grand here and there into a new account under my parents' address. Cashing out some investments we'd made together. I even opened a P.O. box downtown to reroute my paycheck, Clara never noticed. She'd stopped checking our joint accounts months ago, back when she started getting fancy dinners paid for by someone else. Next came the house. I met with a realtor during my lunch break, using a fake name at first. Our place had nearly doubled in value since we bought it, and the market was hot. You could list it tomorrow and have offers by Friday, the realtor told me, walking through our living room while Clara was at work. I told her I needed to think about it. What I really needed was time to get everything in order. The hardest part was acting normal at home. I watched Clara flip through vacation brochures at the kitchen table, circling five-star resorts in the Caribbean like she actually expected us to go there together. "What do you think about Bora Bora for our anniversary?" she asked one night, all smiles. I made myself grin back. Sounds perfect. Her birthday was coming up, May 12th. She'd been dropping hints for weeks about some designer purse she wanted, leaving the website open on our shared laptop like I was too dumb to take the hint. Last year, I would have maxed out our credit card to get it for her. This year, I had something else in mind. I started researching secluded cabins upstate, places with no cell service, no neighbors, no quick way out. Found the perfect one about 3 hours north, tucked so deep in the woods you needed GPS coordinates just to find the driveway. The listing bragged about its complete privacy. I booked it for her birthday weekend under a fake email. Meanwhile, I compiled all the evidence, the tracker logs, the receipts, the damning audio from her car. Spent nights editing it into a clean presentation, complete with timestamps and location markers. The accountant in me wanted everything perfectly organized. I even added background music, that sappy love song she used to play when we were dating. The final piece came when I hacked into her email, password, Mark0923, real subtle, Clara. Scrolling through her sent folder felt like reading someone else's life. There were messages to Mark Anderson, full name now. "Thank you very much," that made my hands shake. Plans for trips they'd take together once she worked up the nerve to leave. A forwarded listing for an apartment in the city. Worst of all, a draft email to a divorce attorney with the subject line, "Initial consultation, David's temper issues." That last one almost made me laugh. I never so much as raised my voice at her in 7 years. But sure, I had temper issues. I saved copies of everything to my encrypted drive. Then I did something even smarter. I sent screenshots to Mark's work email from a burner account. Just a taste of what was coming. Let him sweat for a while. The day before her birthday, I went to the storage unit I'd rented under my brother's name. Started moving things there, family photos, my favorite books, the watch my dad gave me. Anything I didn't want to lose when the storm hit. That night, Clara came home with fresh highlights and a new dress, already in celebration mode. "So," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine, "what's my birthday surprise this year?" I watched the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about past birthdays, the diamond earrings, the weekend in Napa, all the times I'd bent over backwards to make her happy. "You'll see," I said, clinking my water glass against her wine. "It's going to be unforgettable." And for once, I wasn't lying. The morning of Clara's birthday, I woke up before dawn. I'd packed everything the night before while she was out with her girlfriends, another lie, according to her tracker, which showed her at Mark's apartment until 1:17 a.m. The cabin reservation confirmation sat folded in my wallet like a loaded gun. I made her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with that expensive maple syrup she liked, fresh squeezed orange juice. The smell filled the kitchen as I listened to her shuffle down the hallway, still groggy from last night's wine. "Happy birthday," I said, sliding a small box across the table. Clara's eyes lit up when she saw the Tiffany blue packaging. She tore into it like a kid at Christmas, only to frown at the keychain inside, a tiny silver compass. "It's cute," she said, forcing a smile. "Turn it over," I told her. She flipped it to reveal engraved coordinates. "What's this?" "Our getaway." I poured more coffee, watching her over the rim of my mug. "Packed for 2 nights. Somewhere special. Just us." The way her face fell almost made me laugh. She'd been expecting jewelry, maybe a weekend at some spa. Not some cryptic treasure hunt. 3 hours later, we were in the car heading north. Clara spent the first hour texting, probably warning Mark she'd be off-grid, until we hit the dead zone about 20 miles from the cabin. I watched her tap her phone in frustration as the no-service message appeared. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked for the 5th time. "You'll see." The last town disappeared behind us as we turned onto a gravel road. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches scraping the roof of the Lexus. Clara white-knuckled the door handle every time we hit a pothole. When the GPS finally announced we'd arrived, she stared at the cabin like it was a crime scene. "This is it." I killed the engine. Home sweet home. The place looked straight out of a horror movie. Weathered wood, creaky porch steps, a rusted generator humming out back. Perfect. I'd chosen it specifically for the thick walls and total isolation. The nearest neighbor was 6 miles away. Inside, I'd arranged everything in advance. Bottle of champagne chilling. Fireplace prepped with fresh logs. And most importantly, the projector set up facing a blank wall. Clara wandered through the living room, her designer boots clicking against the hardwood. It's cozy. Wait here. I disappeared into the bedroom to grab the laptop, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. When I returned, Clara was pouring champagne, her back to me. I plugged in the HDMI cable. The projector whirred to life. "What are you doing?" she asked, turning around just as the first slide appeared, a screenshot of her fitness tracker's GPS log, the path clearly showing her trips to the Alexander. Her champagne flute hit the floor. The next 20 minutes played out like a courtroom drama. Slide after slide of evidence, the receipts, the deleted selfies, the audio recordings of her and Mark. I timed it all to that stupid love song she used to play, the irony so thick you could choke on it. Clara's face cycled through shock, denial, then raw panic as she realized there was no cell service, no car keys. I'd pocketed them, no quick escape. "You've been tracking me?" Her voice cracked. I advanced to the final slide, a blown-up screenshot of her email to the divorce attorney about my temper issues. The projector hummed in the silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped. "Happy birthday, Clara," I said quietly. "Let's talk about your future." The projector's fan whirred softly in the silence that followed my little presentation. Clara stood frozen near the broken champagne glass, her face pale under the cabin's dim lighting. I watched her throat move as she swallowed hard, her fingers twitching at her sides like she wanted to reach for a phone that couldn't save her. "I can explain," she started. "Don't." I closed the laptop with a quiet click. "We're way past explanations." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the folded papers I'd been carrying for days. The cabin's single overhead light made the quart seal glint as I smoothed them out on the coffee table. "Divorce papers," I said. "Filed last Wednesday. You'll notice I've already signed." Clara's hands shook as she picked them up. Her eyes darted across the page, pausing at the date, then at the section about asset division. "You can't just." "Also," I continued, pulling out my phone, "our joint accounts were frozen this morning." I showed her the banking app, the big red, account restricted, notice glaring on the screen. Turns out financial infidelity is still infidelity under our bank's terms. She made a strangled noise. "You bastard. That's rich." I leaned back against the cabin's stone fireplace. "I took the liberty of doing some research on your friend Mark. Turns out his wife is Amanda Carlisle, you know, the corporate attorney who sued Pharmatech into bankruptcy last year." I let that sink in. I emailed her all our evidence yesterday. She replied within 20 minutes. Clara's knees actually buckled. She caught herself on the arm of the couch, her perfect manicure digging into the fabric. The wind howled outside, rattling the old cabin windows. Somewhere in the distance, a tree branch cracked and fell. "Oh, and about the house," I said casually, like mentioning the weather. "I sold it. Closing's next Tuesday. Your things are in a storage unit on Route 9, paid for 6 months, under my name." I took out the storage key and placed it carefully next to the divorce papers. "You'll need this." Clara's breathing had gone shallow and quick. "You can't do this." "Already done." I pulled up the real estate listing on my phone, sold in big red letters across photos of our home. Got 12% over asking, too. She lunged for the cabin door then, but I'd already removed the key from the deadbolt. Her fists pounded against the solid oak in a way that must have hurt. When she turned back to me, her carefully applied makeup was streaked down her cheeks. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I almost laughed. "No, Clara. What I regret is every anniversary gift, every working late dinner I kept warm, every time I believed you when you said you loved me." I pocketed the cabin key. "But hey, at least you got your birthday trip." Outside, the first fat drops of rain began hitting the roof. A storm was rolling in, trapping us together for the night. I moved to the cabin's small kitchen and started making coffee, humming along to the distant thunder. The paperwork sat untouched on the table between us. The storage key gleamed under the lamplight. And Clara, my beautiful, lying wife, finally understood she'd been outplayed at her own game. The storm raged all night, trapping us in that cabin like some twisted version of couples therapy. Clara alternated between screaming at me and crying in the bedroom, while I sat by the fire reviewing the real estate paperwork for my new penthouse. The place had closed escrow yesterday. 18th floor, downtown views, all paid for in cash from the house sale. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the roads were still a mess. I watched Clara pace the cabin's small living room like a caged animal, her phone useless without service. She tried to leave at dawn, only to find the Lexus tires mysteriously flat. A coincidence, I'm sure. Call a tow truck, she demanded, shoving her dead phone in my face. I sipped my coffee. Once we're back in cell range. The drive back to civilization was the quietest 2 hours of my life. Clara stared out the window the whole time. Her jaw clenched so tight, I could see the muscle twitching. When we finally hit the first bar of service, her phone exploded with notifications. I didn't need to see the screen to know what they were. Mark's panicked texts, Amanda Carlisle's legal threats, messages from confused coworkers who'd heard rumors. I dropped Clara at the storage facility without getting out of the car. She stood there clutching her overnight bag, watching as I drove away without so much as a glance in the rearview. The next few weeks played out exactly as I'd planned. Mark resigned from his firm after Amanda filed for divorce, taking half his assets and their summer home in the Hamptons. Clara's company restructured her out of a job. Turns out sleeping with clients' spouses is bad for business. And thanks to the ironclad prenup her parents had insisted on back when they thought I wasn't good enough for their daughter, Clara got exactly what she'd brought into the marriage, nothing. Meanwhile, I settled into my new building, where the doorman called me Mr. Miller, and the elevator opened directly into my unit. The place smelled like new money and fresh paint, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the whole city spread out below me. I bought new furniture, modern, clean-line stuff Clara would have hated, and slept better than I had in years. I heard from Clara exactly once. A letter arrived 6 weeks after the divorce finalized, forwarded from my old address. She'd sent photos of the storage unit, half empty now, her designer clothes and jewelry all sold off, no doubt. The note read, "You win. Happy." I framed that note and hung it in my home office, right next to the deed for the penthouse. As for justice, well, let's just say Amanda Carlisle turned out to be even more thorough than I'd hoped. Between her lawsuit and the non-disclosure agreement I'd forced Clara to sign, no telling sob stories to the media unless she wanted those car recordings going public, my ex-wife disappeared quietly into obscurity. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents in Connecticut. I still drive by our old house sometimes. The new owners painted the front door red and put in a swing set. Kids' bikes are always scattered across the lawn. Looks like a happy home. And me? I'm sitting on my balcony right now, drinking 18-year-old scotch, watching the sunset reflect off 1,000 windows full of other people's lives. The city hums below me, indifferent to my small drama. The funny thing about revenge is how little satisfaction it actually brings. But the peace that comes after? That's something else entirely. I take another sip of whiskey and smile. Game over. Share your thoughts in the comments. How much does modern tech, trackers, cameras, cloud data, enable both infidelity and revenge? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.